Only one. Eva. Pura. Formerly. Veda. Book of Transcendental Knowledge. Pranavaha. Omkara. Sarvavatmayaka. Consisting of all Vedic mantras. Devaha. The Lord God. Narayana. Only Narayana. Was worshipable in the Satya Yuga. Na anyaha. No other. Eka Agni. One division only for Agni. Varnaha. Order of life. Evacha. And certainly. So translation. In the Satya Yuga, the first millennium, all the Vedic mantras were included in one mantra, Pranava, the root of all Vedic mantras. In other words, the Atharva Veda alone was the source of all Vedic knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, was the only worshipable deity. There was no recommendation for worship of the demigods. Fire was one only, and the only order of life in human society was known as Samsara. You can repeat. In the Satya Yuga, the first millennium, all the Vedic mantras were included in one mantra, Pranava, the root of all Vedic mantras. In other words, the Atharva Veda alone was the source of all Vedic knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayan was the only worshipable deity, and there was no recommendation for worship of the demigods. Fire was one only, and the only order of life in human society was known as Hamsa. That means swan. So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In Satya Yuga, there was only one Veda, not four. Later, before the beginning of Kali Yuga, this one Veda, the Atharva Veda, or some say the Yajur Veda, was divided into four, Sama, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva, for the facility of human society. In Satya Yuga, the only mantra was Omkara, Om Tat Sat. The same name, Omkara, is manifest in the mantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Unless one is a Brahmin, one cannot utter Omkara and get the desired result. But in Kali Yuga, almost everyone is a Shudra, unfit for pronouncing the Pranava, Omkara. Therefore, the Shastras have recommended the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Omkara is a mantra or Maha Mantra, and Hare Krishna is also a Maha Mantra. Purpose of pronouncing Omkara is to address the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And the purpose of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra is the same. Hare, O energy of the Lord. Krishna, O Lord Krishna. Hare, O energy of the Lord. Rama, O Supreme Lord, O Supreme Enjoyer. So just want to mention some as we go through the purport. That's all these three words in the Maha Mantra are in the vocative. That's why Prabhupada is translating as O, energy of the Lord. O Supreme Lord. O Supreme Enjoyer. You understand? That's the vocative form. Vocative means to cry out. Just like Prabhupada said, when you're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, you should be crying out like a child for the mother. It was like last night we had one of the mothers visiting us with a child. And the child was crying out. I was going to record it to dissuade people from taking the household order of life. It was pretty intense. The only worshipful Lord is Hari, who is the goal of the Vedas. By worshipping the demigods, one worships the different parts of the Lord, just as one might water the branches and twigs of a tree. By worshipping Narayana, the all-inclusive Supreme Personality of Godhead is like pouring water on the root of the tree, thus supplying water to the trunk, branches, twigs, leaves, and so on. In Satya Yuga, people knew how to fulfill the necessities of life simply by worshipping Narayana, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The same purpose can be served in this age of Kali by the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra as recommended in the Bhagavatam. Kirtanam eva Krishnasya muktasanda param vajay. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one becomes free from the bondage of material existence and thus becomes eligible to return home back to Godhead. So, Sanskrit. Ekahish eva pura veda pranavasar vavanmayaha devo narayano nandya ikognir varna eva cha. Om Ganat Simadandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Unmeditam Yena Tasmai Shikave Namaha. So, of course, people were more intelligent, more qualified in the Satya Yuga. Oh, there's a baby. So, speak of the baby. Anyway, so people are more intelligent in the Satya Yuga, more qualified in many different ways. They have perfect memories. So it's a completely different situation than we have nowadays. And of course, Srila Vyasadeva, understanding the situation of people in Kali Yuga, he was the one who divided the Vedas. Of course, the word Vyas means to divide. These two words, Samas and Vyas. So Vyas is considered to be the compiler of the Vedic literatures. Of course, the author of the Vedic literatures is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Vedic literatures, the Vedic information, they emanate from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in a strict sense, you can't really say Vyasa is the author. Of course he's the author, but he's not the originator of the Vedic literatures. He's the compiler. He's divided the one Veda into 4 Vedas, and then after that, he compiled different other literatures like the Upanishads. He compiled the Itihasas, that means the histories, and he also compiled the Puranas. And of course, as we mentioned many times before, in the Rig Veda, it is mentioned, the Rig Veda is considered one of the original Vedas. Here it is mentioned, the Tarva Veda is sometimes considered the original, and sometimes the Yajur Veda. But these Vedas are the older Vedas. So in the Rig Veda, it is stated, Om Tad Vishnu Param Pada Pashanti Hat Surya, that all the demigods are looking to Vishnu. Now, primarily in the Rig Veda and in the older Vedas, you have the worship of the demigods. I mean, most of the hymns in the Rig Veda are dedicated to demigods. So one can get very confused and say, well, there's many, many gods in the Rig Veda, although you do have that verse, Om Tad Vishnu Padalam Pada Pashanti Yat Surya. So one interesting way of answering that misunderstanding that people have that there are many gods, or we should worship the demigods, just because of the number of verses, is that you could compare the situation to the government in the United States. Now, I'm not talking politics in a negative way right now, but let's say the government in general. That most of us, when we're interacting with the government, don't interact with the highest level of the government. Most of us, when we're interacting with the government, interact on the lower levels, right? Like if you have to get a driver's license, do you go to the President of the United States? Oh, no. And if you have to get any sort of permit for parade, for a Hare Krishna parade, for Radha Yatra, you don't go to the president, you don't even go to the governor. You go to someone who's on a very low level. So therefore, the majority of interactions, the majority of petitions that we have, just on a practical basis, just fixing the temple here, we didn't go to the mayor, even what to speak of the President of the United States, we just went to, Orange County Building and Permits Department. The majority of interactions are always on the lower level. That doesn't mean the lower level is the absolute truth, or the lower level indicates they're the actual controllers, that we should worship the lower level. It doesn't also indicate we should worship the president either. That would be bad. But generally, that's why most of the verses in the four Vedas are actually dealing with the demigods. And dealing with the modes of nature too, Trigunya Vishya Veda. Nis Trigunya Bhavarjana, Nirdvandvo, Sapasto, Nijyogi Kshema Atmavan, as Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, that the Vedas mainly deal with the modes of nature. The reason they deal with the modes of nature is most people are in the modes of nature. Most people in Kali Yuga, most people are not transcendental. They're interested in something mundane, so they need gradual steps to come to the transcendental platform. So that's why Vyasadeva compiled or expanded the Vedic literatures for that purpose, for the purpose of helping people. And finally, of course, we know not finally, but at one step, he did compile the Mahabharata. And even people were so confused after reading the Mahabharata that he was dissatisfied, and the spiritual master chastised him for confusing people, and then he finally had to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is very explicit. I don't think anybody who reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, of course some people may be completely mogasha, moga, karmano, moga, jnana, vichesa, they may be so bewildered by Krishna's illusory energy, but in general, anybody with a clear mind who reads the Bhagavatam will understand it's a text on bhakti to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. At least if you go to the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll understand these things. It's very explicit. They take Cham Sat Galakram Sad. Krishna is too Bhagavan Swayam. There's nothing left to the imagination. Mahabharata leaves a lot to the imagination. Who's God? Or even the Ramayana, sometimes you can get confused because you have Lord Ram. When he wants to cross the ocean, who does he worship? He worships Lord Shiva. Therefore you have Rameshwaram. Of course, there's two ways to understand that. Rama, who worships Lord Shiva as Ishvara, or Rama, who is the Ishvara of Lord Shiva. There's two ways of pronouncing that. So even you read the Ramayana, you think, Lord Shiva's up there, and he's basically empowering Lord Ram. Of course, obviously, Ram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but people get very confused with these things. So the Bhagavatam is there to clear up the confusion. And so let's talk a little bit about chanting Omkara. Because I remember, before I joined the Krishna Consciousness movement, people were talking about how Omkara was the impersonal Om. Even in the Krishna Consciousness movement, some people misunderstand. They say, if someone chants Om, they say, why are you an impersonalist? Why are you chanting that impersonal mantra? It's not an impersonal mantra, or a Mayavadi mantra. And actually the Mayavadis, and we're going to refer here to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Adi Leela, in the discussion that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had with Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadis in Benares. So the Mayavadis actually considered many mantras, other than the Omkara, to be the primary, or Mahavakya. Mahavakya means the great talk, or the great mantra, in the Vedic literatures. And the Mayavadis, for example, Shankaracharya, he considers the primary mantra in the Vedic literatures to be Tattvamasi. Tattvamasi means you are that. And of course, that's not wrong. We are that. We are what? Spirit souls. Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam, Ego Mohunam, Yogadadabhikam. That means there are many plural eternals, but there's one supreme eternal, and that supreme eternal is maintaining all the plural eternals. So we are that. We do have the same qualities as the Lord, but not in the same quantity. And there's other mantras that they consider to be primary, like Aham Brahmasmi, which is true. I mean, that's a mantra there, but it's not a Mahavakya. Aham Brahmasmi means you are Brahman. You are spirit. So, in this particular section of the Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Omkar is described in great detail. And I'll read. This is 128 in the 7th chapter of the Adi Leela. Yeah. And it's a very long purport, but this is Prabhupada's most complete explanation of what Omkara is, if anyone's interested. It is actually a Krishna conscious mantra. Of course, as Prabhupada comments in the purport, the one really, to chant the Vedic vibration, Omkara, properly, one has to be situated, initiated, a Brahman, in the mode of goodness. Just like we talk about the Gayatri mantras. Those of you who have second initiation have taken Gayatri mantras. There's 7 Gayatri mantras. We chant the mantras in the sandhas, 3 sandhas, 3 times a day. And I remember when we first got the Gayatri mantra from Prabhupada, you get this paper, and of course we still give out that paper today. It says, don't show this paper to anyone else who's not initiated. So I was thinking it's a secret mantra. And anybody who chants it, they'll get I guess the demons will attack him or something. He had all these different ideas. But the point is, in order to chant those mantras effectively, one could read about the Gayatri mantras if you're interested, even if you're not initiated. So many books have been published. Satchidananda Maharaj published one book about the Gayatri mantras. So one can get the mantras, but it won't be effective unless you're initiated. And you also have to be in the mode of goodness, at least while you're chanting. You have to cultivate the mode of goodness. So there's prerequisites for chanting Om. The point I'm making is there's a prerequisite for chanting Omkara effectively. With the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, there are no prerequisites. Anyone and everyone. What is that? Nam Nama Kari Roda that you invested your holy name in the, you invested your transcendental potencies in your holy name. And Niyamena Tishtam. There's no hard and fast rules for chanting Hare Krishna. In other words, we don't wait for the sanjas to chant Hare Krishna. Let's say if you don't finish your rounds before, 8 o'clock in the morning, then it's not that you can't chant it, you have to wait till noon, or you have to wait till the evening to chant. You can chant at any time. You can chant, just like I travel by airplane. I chant while I'm sitting in an airplane next to people who are not so Krishna conscious. That's interesting, not so Krishna conscious. You could chant anywhere and everywhere. When we were on traveling Sankirtan, we used to chant our rounds in the bathrooms of the KOAs. In case you don't know what that is. That's a campground of America. Because that was the only warm place, and we were distributing Srila Prabhupada's books around Chicago, Illinois, where it was so cold, it was unbelievable. So we had to have a warm place to chant. So anyway, so let me read some of this because I didn't want to just simply speak. The translation is the Vedic sound, vibration, Omkara, the principal word in the Vedic literatures. In fact, all the mantras begin with Om, the Vedic mantras. Is the basis of all Vedic vibrations. Therefore, one should accept Omkara as the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the reservoir of the cosmic manifestation. That's so powerful. So powerful. It's the principal word, I'm just reiterating, it's the principal word in the Vedic literatures. It's the sound representation of the Lord, and it's the reservoir of the whole cosmic manifestation. Wow. It's not impersonal. So in the Bhagavad Gita, of course, Prabhupada here quotes in his purport from Bhagavad Gita 8.13. Om is mentioned actually twice, not only in this verse. So I'll read this. Om it yakaksaram brahma vyaharan mam anusmaram yalpre prayati chashan beham sayati paramam gatim. That this verse indicates that Omkara Pranava is the direct representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, at the time of death, because the 8th chapter deals with attaining the Supreme, or what happens at the time of death, yam yam vati smaran bhavam yashatayanti kalevaram. One simply remembers Omkara, he remembers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is immediately, therefore, transferred to the spiritual world. Very powerful. And of course, the other verse in the Gita is Pranava Sarvaveda Shabda Ke Purasham Rishu. I am the Om. Krishna is the Om in the Vedic literatures. And also the sound vibration of either. Shabda Ke Purasham Rishu. Omkara is the basic principle of all Vedic mantras for his representation of Lord Krishna. Understanding of whom is the ultimate goal of the Vedas as stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Mayavadi philosophers cannot understand these simple facts explained in the Bhagavad Gita, yet they are very proud of being Vedantis. Here Prabhupada says something very humorous. Sometimes, therefore, we refer to the Vedanti philosophers as Vedantis, those who have no teeth. You could try that sometime. If someone says, I'm a Vedantist. It's you're Vedanti. Vedanti. You have to pronounce it a little bit different. So V means without, and Danti means possessing teeth. Just like in India, there's a toothpaste called lightning teeth or something. What is the name of that toothpaste? Vajra Dant.
Oh, that's Vico.
Yeah, Vajra Dant. Vajra means lightning bolt teeth. So, the statements of the Shankara philosophers, which are the teeth of the Mayavadi philosopher, are always broken by the strong arguments of Vaishnava philosophers, such as great acharyas, especially Ramanujacharya, Sripad Ramanujacharya, and Madhvacharya, break the teeth of the Mayavadi philosophers, who can therefore be called Vedantis, toothless. As mentioned above, the transcendental vibration Omkara is explained in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 13, which we quoted before. After being situated in this yoga practice and vibrating the sacred syllable Om, the supreme combination of letters, if one thinks of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and quits his body, he will certainly reach the spiritual planets. If one actually understands that Omkara is the sound representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whether he chants Omkara, the Hare Krishna mantra, the result is certainly the same. We're not going to have a lot of time to read this whole thing. I'm going to... Is it? Here. I'm going ahead to the middle of the purport. One should not, however, foolishly conclude that because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is omnipotent, we have manufactured a combination of letters A, U, and M to represent it. Factually, the transcendental sound Omkara, although a combination of the three letters A, U, and M, has transcendental potency, and one who chants Omkara will very soon realize Omkara and Lord Vishnu to be non-different. Krishna declares, and this is a verse I quoted before, Pranava Sarvaveda I am the syllable Om in the Vedic literatures, Vedic mantras. One should therefore conclude that among the many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Omkara is the sound incarnation. All the Vedas accept this thesis. One should always remember that the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are always identical. Abhidanatvam namanamino. That's right, verse Namachintamani, Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnashira Mukto, abhinatvam namanamana. Since Omkara is the basic principle of all Vedic knowledge, it is uttered before one begins to chant any Vedic hymn. Without Omkara, no Vedic mantra is successful. The Goswamis therefore declare that Pranava Omkara is the complete representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they have analyzed Omkara in terms of its alphabetical constituents. This is very interesting. As follows. A. Kareno Chite Krishna Sarva Lokaika Nayakaha. U. Kareno Chite Radha Makaro Jiva Vachakaha. And this is what that verse says. Omkara is a combination of the letters A, U, and M. A. Kareno Chite Krishna. The letter A, Kara, refers to Krishna, who is Sarva Lokaika Nayakaha, the master of all living entities and planets, material and spiritual. Nayaka means leader. He is the supreme leader. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. That's why I already quoted. The letter U, Kara, indicates Shrimati Radharani, the pleasure potency of Krishna. And Ma, Kara, indicates the living entity's jiva. Thus is the complete combination of Krishna, his potency, and eternal servitors. In other words, Omkara represents Krishna, his name, fame, pastimes, entourage, expansions, devotees, potencies, and everything else pertaining to him. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu states in the present verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarva Vishwadharma Omkara. Vishwadharma. Omkara is the resting place of everything, just as Krishna is the resting place of everything. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. That verse is from the Bhagavad Gita. And that verse states that Krishna is the source of the Brahman effulgence. That's one of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita that basically defeats the Mayavada philosophy. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. It's a very important verse for everyone to remember. The Mayavadi philosophers consider many Vedic mantras to be the Mahavakya, and this is what I mentioned before. Principal Vedic mantras such as Tattvamasi, Chandogya Upanishad, Idam Sarvam Yad Ayam Atma, and Brahmedam Sarvam, that's Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, Atmaivam Sarvam, Chandogya Upanishad, and it probably goes through the whole list. Only Omkara is the Mahavakya. All these other mantras that the Mayavadis accept as the Mahavakya are only incidental. They cannot be taken as the Mahavakya or a Mahamantra. In other words, Omkara is also Mahamantra. The mantra Tattvam Asi indicates only a partial understanding of the Vedas, unlike Omkara, which represents the full understanding of the Vedas. There's another explanation of Omkara. The full understanding of the Vedas. Therefore, the transcendental sound that includes all Vedic knowledge is Omkara. Let's see. Is there anything else in this book that I wanted to talk about? Yes. The basis of all the Upanishads, skipping back, Srila Jiva Goswami says that Omkara is the supreme absolute truth and is accepted as such by all the acharyas and authorities. Omkara is beginningless, changeless, supreme, and free from deterioration and external contamination. Omkara is the origin, middle, and end of everything. And any living entity who thus understands Omkara attains the perfection of spiritual identity in Omkara. Omkara, being situated in everyone's heart, is Ishvara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 1861. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hridesha arjuna tishati. Omkara is as good as Vishnu because Omkara is as all-pervasive as Vishnu. One who knows Omkara and Lord Vishnu to be identical no longer has to lament or hanker. One who chants Omkara no longer remains a Shudra, but immediately comes to the position of Brahman. Simply, I'm not trying to encourage everyone to give up chanting Hare Krishna and just oming their way around. That's not the point. Because Hare Krishna is non-different, and actually that's Lord Chaitanya's special manifestation of Omkara for us in Kali Yuga. In fact, it's more important and more powerful than Omkara because it's the Hare Krishna mantra is the prayer for service. We, like we mentioned before, the three words in the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna and Ram, are all vocative. Please, my Lord, let me serve you. Please, my Lord's internal potency, put me under your jurisdiction so I can serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Simply by chanting Omkara, one can understand the whole creation to be one unit or an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Idam hi Vishwam Bhagavan Nivetarud Ayato Jagatstana Niroda Sambhava. The Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, is himself the cosmos, and he is still is aloof from it. From him only this cosmic manifestation is emanated, in him it rests, and unto him it enters after annihilation. That's from the Bhagavatam. Although one who does not understand concludes otherwise, Srimad Bhagavatam states that the entire cosmic manifestation has been an expansion of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Realization of this is possible simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, Omkara. So we wanted to glorify Omkara so the devotees don't get confused, thinking it's something impersonal, something material. It's actually a very important mantra. So any questions? Yes?
So Omkara is not different from the Hare Krishna mantra,
Yeah.
but many people who chant it, they don't have the Omkara. I mean, they're mindless.
Right.
So for them, are they getting the benefit? Or
There's the Sikriti benefit, but they're not able to enter into the spiritual realm because they're not receiving the mantra in disciplic succession. Now, all mantras, of course, the statement is Sampradaya Vinahi mantras Tenish Balamata. All mantras must be received in disciplic succession. But fortunately for us, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given all the living entities in Kali Yuga the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So that is the actual authorized process for us in Kali Yuga. Although chanting Om, if you receive it in disciplic succession, will have spiritual effect.
But not from Shankara.
Not from Shankara. No, not if one takes an impersonal or improper understanding of the Lord. Okay, Radha Goloka.